If you want to practice all of the new PTE questions using artificial intelligence on an online portal that has a similar marking to your real PTE exam, head over to masterpte.com.au to create a free account. Here, you can practice all 4 sections separately and receive instant feedback for all of your speaking, writing, reading, and listening. You can also view and compare your answers with others who have already succeeded in achieving a high score. Download 9090 Band's template for speaking, writing, and listening. Take mock test, receive instant result, overall feedback, and in-depth analysis which helps you pinpoint exactly where you lose points. masterpte.com.au, the best PTE practice software in the world.
What's the literal definition of risk? Business schools use risk analysis. So what do you mean by risk? And we need a dictionary. When you look at the dictionary, this is literal definition of risk. What it says is, the definition, for example, the possibility of injury, a dangerous element or factor, chance of, degree or possibility of such loss, and so on. So risk has 2 parts. As you look at the literal definition of risk, one part is the consequence of some kind of particular danger, hazard, loss, and the other is about the probability of it, the chance and consequence, okay? And then, at least just as English language concerns, when you look up the word of safe and safety, which you'll earn as, it's a little bit of a loop, a little circular argument that free from harm or risk, secure from danger, harm, or loss, the condition of being safe, and so on for all. And what do we take out of it? At least when we talk about safe, at least in English language, we are talking absolute something is safe or it sounds safe.
You've got sound receptors in your ear, and they're beautiful. We're not going to talk about them at any length, but there's little flappy, these little spiky things going along in your ear, and they can translate vibrational energy coming from your ear, hitting your eardrum, being translated into a vibration in the fluid in your ear, into a physical motion of these little receptors there, into an electrical motion, into an electrical signal that goes into your ear. So all that's pretty impressive stuff. We're not going to talk about the details of it, but I invite some of you who want to learn more about this, particularly MIT students, I think, find receptors to be really quite remarkable.
Talent is premium, and there is a war for talents in 1990s because of the talent shortage. Companies and countries are recruiting young talented people from different countries and sending young people to universities. Some young people immigrated after they graduated from the university. They compete with local students. Countries and organizations should put talents at the primary positions. The collapse of loyalty makes employees happy to change their workplace for higher income. There are three reasons. First, the change of nature of economy leads to increase in the talents demand and skills needed. Second, the shrinking labor force after the baby boom causes less supply of skilled workers, and the retirement of baby boomers will cause a shortage of experienced workers. Third, there is also a mismatch between what schools are producing and what companies need.
According to the information from skeletons, as we don't have the real people to study on, our ancestors in Stone Age hunted animals for food instead of planting their food. That's why there was a wide variety of food. But the lifestyle was still difficult because they had infection diseases later. Although they had produced hundreds of food, the quality of diets was not good at all.
Last week we talked about how people recognize objects, and really how well people recognize objects, given how difficult the problem is, given how objects can be seen in all different sorts of illumination, in different positions, in different angles. And yet we are able to extract that information. We are able to take the visual stuff out there, interpret it in a way that allows us to recognize all the different things that we can see in our environment. Today we're going to kind of carry on looking at that. We're going to look at what's really a special class of objects. That's the human face. We're going to look at how we recognize human faces and how we do it quite as well as we do. We're really expert at recognizing faces. So again, we can think about how do we take that visual information and how do we transfer it into a form which allows us to put a name to a face and to do all the other clever things we can do with faces. So I'm going to start off again by just pointing out that it's a hard problem. Face recognition is a hard problem, and it's a clever thing we do. If you think about all the different types of faces you can recognize and all the different types of information you can get from the face, you kind of start to appreciate how well we can do face recognition.
Well, I would argue that what they will say was the most important thing to happen in the early 21st century was the merger of globalization and the IT revolution. The two really fused in a way that more and more IT started to drive more and more globalization, and more globalization started to drive more and more IT. And what that fusion did was take the world from connected to hyper-connected, and from interconnected to interdependent. These are huge differences of degree that are differences in kind. It happened over the last decade. You are all feeling it in your jobs, in your universities, in your schools. But no one's really explaining it to people. Everyone's living this fusion now. The plumbing of the world fundamentally changed in the last 10 years.
Let's think about perhaps the top 10 things that people would like to know or ought to know about Shakespeare if they're getting into his works. The first thing to say is that he did live quite a long time ago. He lived 400 years ago. So if you're reading Shakespeare or listening to Shakespeare, you're listening to somebody whose language is not quite the language of our current. You're listening to someone who was writing in a language which is a bit out of date for now. It needs a little bit of effort to understand that language, but the understanding will be done partly for you by the actors if you're hearing it or if you're seeing it performed. Another thing is that Shakespeare was a very good poet. He wrote poems, narrative poems and sonnets, but he was also, and this is my third point, he was also a great theater poet. His poetry is dramatic poetry in his plays. He's not just writing static poetry, lyric poetry in the plays, which is therefore declamation. He's writing dramatic poetry, which consists of interaction between the characters of the plays.
The main reasons for global bees' decline are industrial agriculture, parasites, pathogens, and climate change. The conclusions are real and well documented with strong evidence to support this important fact. The loss of biodiversity, destruction of habitat and lack of forage due to monocultures and bee-killing pesticides are particular threats for honeybees and wild pollinators. It is becoming increasingly evident that some insecticides, at concentrations applied routinely in the current chemical-intensive agriculture system, exert clear, negative effects on the health of pollinators, both individually and at the colony level. The observed, sublethal, low-dose effects of insecticides on bees are various and diverse. Most importantly, the main drivers of the decline are varied depending on different species, and people are becoming aware of the problems in order to take some actions before huge loss to our agriculture occurs.
People forget things every day, including experiences, feelings and thoughts, and we call this process biological forgetting. Remembering is hard for people, and people try to overcome biological forgetting. Humans' memory is not fixed, but it can be reconstructed and shaped by the past. People can capture precise things for a long period. Poverty control is important in emerging world. In the development in the year 2000, China has promised to reduce half the poverty and the goal has been met. China has moved and taken actions to make poverty reduction become a reality. China also created a lot of middle-income people and opportunities to other countries. China also benefits other economies, such as Australia.
If you want to practice all of the new PTE questions using artificial intelligence on an online portal that has a similar marking to your real PTE exam, head over to masterpte.com.au to create a free account. Here, you can practice all 4 sections separately and receive instant feedback for all of your speaking, writing, reading, and listening. You can also view and compare your answers with others who have already succeeded in achieving a high score. Download 9090 Band's template for speaking, writing, and listening. Take mock test, receive instant result, overall feedback, and in-depth analysis which helps you pinpoint exactly where you lose points. Masterpte.com.au, the best PTE practice software in the world.